Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? So, last thing we've got to build on at Finch Farm here is the overpass. So we're going to need a method for our settlers to get up to the top there. So as you can see, I've built them a little staircase, which I'm pretty pleased with the results on. So, as always, if you like what you see, do hit that big red button, and let's get stuck in. So the original plan here was to remove the Finch's house down the bottom there and use that space to build a solid stairway up. But despite my best efforts and the best efforts of Scrap That Settlement, that's not going to happen. The house is going absolutely nowhere, so we had to build over it, which has actually turned out better than I would have expected. That did require a lot of rapid rethinking. So we've started at the top because it's a lot easier to line things up that way, as opposed to sort of guessing at the height as you work your way up. This way, as you can clip through the ground and in this case the building with a bit more facility, it's much easier to start here. So we'll get the upper level in place, so we've got something to mount to. We get a staircase on and run into our first mistake. If I can actually get this thing to clip on, which took forever actually, partly because I didn't want to fall off. There we go. Can't get down there, so we'll spin that round and get onto the right track again. So you can do some very basic builds with this, just to put together a scaffolding if you like, which is basically where we started out, but I wanted to expand on it and make it a little bit more interesting. Although if you're not good with heights like me, that made coming down this particular staircase less than enjoyable, but we got there. Working out this last bit was a bit of a pain, because done right, as you can see, it will clip through the roof and doesn't actually stick too far through. But you can't see it at all until it highlights like that, which is great. However, if you use a single solid ladder to go that whole last distance, this is the same length, but it won't snap through for some reason. Big thing with this, it's not so much glitching or anything like that, more just getting the build order right, figuring out how the various components will work. So we need a way up to the roof of the house. As the simplest solution is to have them just walk across the roof here. And I actually should test this because I haven't got around to doing that yet. So with that lot in place, we'll get some support on for these. This floating staircase is somewhat less than believable. As you can see, we're starting to have a slight technical difficulty with the positioning of the stairwell. So we'll pull that out and go around the other side. I'm quite pleased that the scaffolding floor just sat straight on the roof here. That was very convenient of it. And the support here clipped through quite nicely without sticking too far through the wall either, so it's all turned up quite well. Snap a lower level in so it's not floating. And there we go. Well, that should make for a nice smooth run up there. Some supports on here. So if you use this scaffolding at this kind of height, it'll just stick right through the ceiling of the house, which would be unfortunate to say the least. So we'll just stick the rest of them in, get the rest of the build supported. Which this bit won't work because it's stretching across two separate pieces, whereas the framework's just designed to go over one, so it won't quite play ball, unfortunately. However, it works much better that way anyway, so single piece in there. Use the half-sized frame, and there we go. Does take a little bit of patience to get these in, but you get there in the end. Now at this stage, we could just put some railings on and let it go at that, and that would do the job just fine. It actually looked fairly cool. But I wanted to do a little bit more with it, turn it into a kind of structure rather than just a frame. And very conveniently, the warehouse pieces and the scaffolding pieces use the same sort of 1 1/3, 1 1/4 height, whichever it may be. Which means you can just snap these on quite nice and easily and have them fit. build order rather, notwithstanding anyway. So I wanted to keep that very scrappy vibe. Feel like something that's just been sort of thrown up, making use of what they had available, and in keeping with the rest of the style of the build as well. So we've left some fairly big holes. Just putting the extra floor in there, and I'll pull that stair off in just a moment, because for some reason, whilst the warehouse stairs, which actually end up slotting in there, are quite forgiving with their collision, the scaffolding ones are less so. So a little bit of flexibility with the pieces was required there. On the other hand, the warehouse stairs, unlike the scaffolding ones, are much rustier, which makes them look a lot more like they've been in place for a while. And it works quite well. And it mixes up textures a bit as well, which is always good. So there we go, we're on warehouse stairs here, rather than the scaffolding ones. Set those in nice and easily. And the half-size one there. And there we go. As I say, once you figured out the build order, these cooperate quite well. Though that little section of frame there was going to get in the way, you either wouldn't be able to get up the staircase if you put flooring on it, or it just kind of stuck out off the side a little bit and just really didn't look right. So, new solution was required. I actually tried to do this bit on a couple of occasions, this lower section, but the first time it just wouldn't cooperate for some reason. I came back to it later and then everything just snapped in fine. Again, it does clip slightly through the roof, but not so far below the struts on the inside of it that you can really see it, so it was all very, very convenient, really. This end piece here, unfortunately, looked absolutely awful, as you can see at the bottom edge there. Just sort of floats. So a new solution was required, so pull that out, and we'll come back to that in a minute. And for the sake of something vaguely resembling neatness anyway, we'll close this edge off a little bit. And there we go, striking build order again. Move the staircase out of the way, it goes in just fine. Now, I'd fiddle around a bit to get it to go back in, but we get there. Eventually. There we go. So use some of the window pieces so you sort of see what you're doing as you go up the staircase, and it's worked pretty well. Nice little mix and match on the textures. Courtesy of USA. I actually ended up leaving that half piece there and just putting a matching one on the other side, just to leave a big gap there, which worked with the ramshackle look quite well. And using both pieces rather than just the one left it looking fairly complete as well, despite the huge hole in the wall, which I was quite pleased with. As I say, most of it's fairly basic. And I realise it's getting dark, but we'll skip on in just a moment. Let's eventually get the staircase back in. Just another example of figuring out where to stand to put it in. There we go. And making sure you use the right stair. There we go, full size one. I think we're actually standing on a warehouse floor rather than the scaffolding one down there, which is probably what made the difference. So up here, the initial plan was to put an extra layer of walls on. However, they won't fit. So I just put a roof on and worked with that. I was going to put it on sideways, which would have looked fairly cool, but I think actually what it forced me to do in putting it on straight worked out better in the long run anyway. Allowed me to tidy up the edges a bit more, like this. Just created a nice neat look. Sort of like going into a loft room, really. Quite happy that that turned out. You see some pieces being forgiving here where they're snapping and some just not. But I think again it's down to the staircase more than the railings. So on this side we're hitting a scaffolding staircase. It just doesn't want to play ball. And we'll replace it with a warehouse one anyway. So just a little bit of finishing off now. And I've faffed around with a few different stairs here that I just wasn't really happy with the final look on. And they're fine, I just wanted something a little bit different. So, back to the cinder blocks again. Plus, with the concrete pillar, these are easy to adjust. The other thing with those scaffolding ones, I'm not sure how far through the ground rather they'll end up sticking out, so you might be able to see them just poking through from beneath, which would really not work. So, to get a bit of a match with the guy lift we've got to the left here, just see the sandbags around the edge of that. We'll rug glitch a couple of these on the edge. Unfortunately, they won't sit very close on the rain. I don't know whether those rugs will end up being a pain later on down the line, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Rinse and repeat. There we go. No idea if this car's going to stay where I've put it, but for now it'll tidy up the look, complete it out a little bit. Same thing with the barrels. Nothing special, just tidies it all up, makes it look a little more finished. If I can get it in the right place. So, this is the last major point of the build. Obviously this end's floating, and we need to do something about that. Unfortunately what I can do is a little limited, but things will snap through that roof okay, but they won't sink through it. If that makes any sense. And the thing to bear in mind when you're putting these poles in, rather, is that if you're not looking at the bottom of the pole, it will just go red straight away. You need to be staring right at that bottom edge there, like that, which can be a bit of a pain from the point of view of lining it up. And beware when that happens, because if you allow the smaller one to just snap inside the larger one like that, you will then have to start all over again, which is a bit of a nightmare. So other than that, it's just a case of adjust, test and adjust. In this case it won't even go in at all, but we'll get there eventually. And then we'll progress on to the tour. As I say, given that I had to scrap the original idea and rework it, just make do with what I had available, I'm quite happy with how this turned out. Kind of fits the rest of the build pretty well. It looks pretty good, I think. Then I suppose I wouldn't be showing it to you if I did. Nice, easy way out. Out, up. I did give some thought to putting some electric lighting in here, but running wires all the way up the outside of the place would have been inconvenient to say the least, and probably would have ruined the aesthetic somewhat. And that is a very simple little solution to a problem. Albeit with much faffing around to get there anyway. So, thank you very much for watching as always. If you'd like to keep up to date with everything going on the channel, then do find me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, /Darth Xion Games. I shall be speaking to you all very soon. Thank you very much.